But if you think that's good, listen to this. You ready?
Sure.
Otorinolaryngologia.
Wow,
Did you hear that?
excellent.
Otorinolaryngologia. And I can say it really quick as well. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So usually when I have a chance to give a talks like this, I wonder inside of my head, sometimes loud like now, uh, uh, who gave me a right to talk to you guys about HRs and startups. So let me give you maybe first few or a couple of minutes just why they chose me to give this speech, or why I actually accepted to giving this speech. So in the past, I worked for numerous, let's say, big IT companies from IBM to Siemens, also running a big system integrator here in Serbia. So in there, I do believe that I've seen a lot of versions of HR that do work and doesn't work in IT. And the last couple of years, especially the last year or so, since I became a CEO of Initiative Digital Serbia, I deal with a lot of startups. And somehow, from the very beginning, I strongly believe that as every organization that tries to recruit, get their people better, keep them together, uh, startups as well need HR. Of course, it's not easy. It's difficult because by its nature, startups are someone who has a lot of things that are not so structured, right? And the thing is that they have a problem structuring themselves, and in that sense, HR is kind of opposite to them, and HR is somebody who is trying to give them the structure, right? For a lot of startups, HR is about codes and guidelines. It's completely different. For a lot of big corporation, for CEOs, HR are the guys who talk about emotions, empathy, and so on. For startup founders, HR people are perceived completely different. Therefore, it's not easy to put two worlds together. So I try to go in the first part of my presentation in what actually uh, HR should provide to startups, and then I try to go to some ideas of how the startup ecosystem in Serbia perceives overall position of HR and where they see them. And then to sum it up, maybe several messages. But to go back to beginning and to try to figure out when does a startup really start needing HR, not to just look at, let's say, experience for the small markets as Serbia is. I looked at Y Combinator, which is this really excellent organization from West Coast that uh, did act as an accelerator for many unbelievably successful startups. And these guys, they tell you that either that you when you have a 20 to 30 employees, or when you get to Series A investments, which should be several millions in today's world. Obviously, these valuations go up and down, and this changes a lot. But let's just say that you get to the point where somebody already invested a couple of millions in your company, and by that time you should have 20 to 30 employees. HR becomes relevant, or you should have one. So much smarter people with much bigger sample claim that, and yeah, who am I to disagree? Plus, I actually do agree with this. So let's say that this is definition of where, when, and when is the time for HR to look into maybe a startup, or startups to look for HR. Um, so, you know, broadly looking, HR in a startup should worry about these four areas of responsibility. Uh, and very often, believe it or not, HR is probably one of the first grown-ups, or behaving like a grown-up, walking into startups. Startups are driven by desires, by energy, by these strong commitments and believe in what they do, be it a service, be it a product, and it's not always level-headed. So HR are the people who brings this, let's say, level-headedness to startup. And to start with, a lot of startups believe that, you know, the rules of this world do not apply to them, especially the rules brought by these boring people from government, and labor laws, and taxations, and so on. Um, there's such a thing as a workplace safety, and every workplace, doesn't matter if you are the next Apple or not, should be obeyed. Your employees should, you know, sign the contract. And then eventually, even in this dreamy world of the startup, there is a termination, and somebody needs to take care of that, so that, you know, you don't end up on your hands with some litigation. So legal protection is actually something that is quite important to bring with you when you go to startup as an HR, because other than you, probably nobody will even have a clue that this is really, really needed. um, then again, definition of a startup, usually one of the broad one, it says that the startups are the companies that are having this rapid growth, and they are innovative in their based on some technology. So this scaling up usually means the scaling up in a talent as well. So recruitment is quite important for a startup. And uh, especially in this tender couple of years where culture is so important, and founders are the, you know, motivating everyone, actually having a proper processes of how you choose people, so you don't end up with a bunch of friends that call themselves a company. uh, this is where HR really helps. And then again, in this very competitive market, especially in IT, actually figuring out what is the proper offer, and how to structure the offer, and the contract. And then for this person who comes in a place where everybody knows each other and had many sleepless nights, uh, onboarding really is really important thing to do properly. And again, probably no one but HR will be aware the new person needs much more than just a computer and a chair, that actually showing around, and kind of getting used to. It's a normal human process that needs some guidance. So in that sense, from recruitment to onboarding, HR really helps, especially if you see the growth from, you know, 10 to 15 people to 40, 50 people. That initial growth might be the most stressful one, and in there also organizing the line of communications, and growing from a place where everybody knows each other and celebrate birthdays together and watch the games together and say good morning to each other every morning, to the place where, you know, days go by until you see somebody from the different department. God forbid that word, you know, start the world, but at some point, if you want to be successful, you even have departments. So this is the wisdom that you need to bring to your new employee. And then employee training, obviously, usually startups have a very strong uh, either engineering muscle or domain knowledge about area that startup is dealing with, but everything else is lacking. Um, Keeping track of technology update when you're so focused on, I don't know, raising money, getting first traction, getting your MVP to work, is quite important to keep reminding people. Management development, you know, as you grow, you start with B2C, then you have to go to B2B, and the rules of the game and engagement changes, and there are things to learn about it. And again, people needs to be reminded about it. Career development is especially important thing, because, you know, entering new exciting startup is fun for weeks, months, but not for years. And everybody wants to know where is this going. So yeah, we're going to get to IPO, but before we get to IPO, what's going to happen to me? So this is the answers that sometimes, you know, are expected, again, from no one else but HR on board. And then record keeping is quite important, because, you know, for going back to the first point of legal protection, these are the stuff that are expected for every company to have out there, and the startups just believe that everybody will believe that they are these cute, fun people to have around, and that nobody will apply the rules to them. And we know that's not the truth. So you know, HR is an excellent position to kind of start taking care of that. And then let's say that once, let's say, if we drafted what are maybe expectation and perceptions of uh, HR within the startup organization, I had the idea to look at the startup scanner that organization that I lead did the beginning of this year. So this is the inputs are coming from 151 startups in Serbia, which is a fair sample of startups in Serbia. And for those of you that are not especially interested in Serbia, I think that you can look at this as a some expanding and growing ecosystem input. And it's quite interesting how they perceive things. So if you look at the employee expertise, very positive that 10% of the startups actually do have HR already, and most of Serbian startups are, let's say, 10 plus employees. So that means that very early on, they get that they need HR. But then one thing that is really funny to me, when they say what's a difficult position to fill, human resource comes a very low on their list, and this actually tells you that probably they have no idea what they're looking for. And this is something that probably can put us in a position to believe that of those people that they call HR, I'm not so sure that they really do what HR should do, especially the stuff that I already mentioned. So that means that even the people who are first HRs in startups might be that only in name, or might be that just because they're trying to be HR. And I guess that's okay, because if startups should be able to do something that's pivoting, that means that they should be able to recognize their mistakes and change them. So uh, when we ask what are the sectors of the team that needs expansion for next 12 months, uh, actually human resources kept the same level of, let's say, visibility in their desires. So they said that about 10 to 15% of the people they're about to hire uh, are HR. And just to put the frame on this, 151 startup that we ask how many people you plan to hire gave us their estimate that they plan to hire about 800 people. Uh, Considering that today in Serbia, we can claim based on the databases that we lead that there is for sure more than 500 startups in Serbia. That means that startup ecosystem, and we will check that in a couple of months again when we plan to do the scanner for 2023, uh, should have hired, in a neighborhood of about 2,000 people. And if the percentages keep being the same as in their inputs in the questionnaire, some 200 people from HR world should be finding the placement in these companies. And for size of Serbian economy and overall, you probably will agree that that's not a bad number. So, just information for you out there on the Serbian or regional market. These are the numbers that is coming probably your way, and then we are hoping that uh, 2023 gives us even better number, because even though with all the gloom and doom coming from the world, technology startups are kind of still, keeping it strong, at least here in Western Balkans. Uh, yeah, and then these are the biggest challenges as they perceive, and it comes very normal that the startup would perceive that the biggest challenge is financing. Uh, but one thing that is quite important is that the third from the top is employment of staff with adequate skills. And this is also excellent, considering the fact that finding these people, and then, as we already talked, putting them on board, and guiding them to being successful in the new company, probably falls on the shoulders of HR. That means that you know besides the financing, which will probably be squarely on the founders, and then customer acquisition that comes to sales, third most important sector in startup is HR. And actually, that really makes sense from, I can say that from the standpoint of angel investor in startup. I can say that from the point of somebody who led organization as small as 10 people up to 500 people. So, I hope that a lot of you agrees with me. But then again, this is another good positive sign for, marriage of HR and startups, if you allow me the freedom of expression. And then what are important goals? And then again, somehow, uh, this is not as something that should be there, but you see there that organizational development and strengthening employee motivation and human resources development do take middle of this, let's say, middle of the pack importance in terms of goals. So just, if you don't trust my word, or you don't trust the word out there of articles and podcast and whatever is written, this is the input coming from startups in a budding, developing ecosystem. So it's quite encouraging that at this level, where the value of Serbian ecosystem is not where we want it to be. It's nowhere close to leading lights of European startup ecosystems. There is obviously a very positive recognition that HRs are needed, and that HR skills are important for development of the startup. So yeah, in trying to close everything down, uh, what are the some musts for HR in startup? And I do believe that the most important thing is for HR to say no to founders, and you know what it means in what situations. So let me just give you one example. Usually, you have anywhere between 2 and 4 founders. That's, let's say, usual. And then, when they start getting into phase when they need the first employees, usually the first employees are their friends, which kind of is normal. This is very similar to military unit. The loyalty and friendship is the probably the two strongest thing going for the first employees after the founders. Now, sometimes these first employees are very useful. Sometimes they are main cheerleaders. And if everything goes well, the startup, from our example, will grow. And when they come to 30, 40 people, what happens to the first employees? Founders keep saying, "Oh, these are the guys who are the longest here." So, well, they have this tendency then to make the argument in front of everyone, especially in front of themselves, that, okay, so this guy is not only my friend, but he's been around the longest, so he knows everything, or she knows everything. So therefore, these are our new C-level people. And no, that's not a good idea, because if you allow the cheerleader in chief to become your CEO, then you might have the operations that don't work that well. And I don't believe there is any other person who is better positioned to say no at that point to founders than HR. Because if, for example, an angel investor or some VC guy come and say that, the everybody will perceive that this is coming from their cold heart that only wants to see X's and exits and so on. And HR should be the one that is somewhere in between, and both understands the organization, should be believed to talk not just up from Excel and ones and zeros, but rather to talk from the standpoint of what's the best for the company. So take that example, and I can give you numerous other ones where just saying no to founders is really crucial. It's very difficult because some of the founders just don't say, they don't take no, they don't take any orders. Most of them are very difficult in taking no, or any explicit form of negation. Usually you have to cajole them to do something, because after all, they really did cry, bleed, and everything else for that company. But still, for their own sake, this is important to do. uh, so another few things that I do believe that are important for HR to do is, you know yes, those founders are the guys who set the tone, but at some point, the company should start having the culture, right? So it's not only up to founder are obviously the biggest influencers, the bellwethers of every startup. But then the company culture start forming, and then we saw in last decade or so some really gross examples of what startup culture can turn into. And from frat houses that people don't uh, feel very comfortable, to such a basic thing as hygiene is okay, and people over 35 are not old, and all other things that you can probably come up by yourself. There's a lot of things that make this startup culture some place where not many people will come to work, or even if they come to work, they don't feel very comfortable. And then when you talk about motivation and everything else that is important, and very often startups need this extra hooray to get to a certain level, that will just go out the window, and you can probably forget about raising the next round and so on. Um, yeah, I start seeing the questions, but anyway, this is probably a common sense thing about what HR has to do. But I'm going back to like one of main themes of my today talk. Very often, HR in startup uh, would be probably the closest to comes to only grown up in the room, uh, and expect that. And if you like that, then startups are perfect for you. So to summarize it, at least in Serbian startup ecosystem, and I probably can say in the Western Balkan ecosystem, you know, startup recognize the value and what they can get and what they should get from HR. HR has a bit different role than in, you know, let's say grown-up companies. Their perception is completely different from big companies when they come to startup. But I do believe it's all fun, and I do recommend you to work with the startups because these guys keep you on your toes all the time. So with that, I finish, and I see that we have some questions. So um, I assume that I read them aloud and then start answering to them. So the question, the first one that came is: do you think that nowadays, when the war for talent is on, startups can attract, retain, and manage talents without actual HR, department? Uh, I honestly think the answer is yes. Oh, here comes my,
Yeah, no, that's fine. You answer that question, and I'll ask the other questions for you.
Oh, okay, I start taking your job. Sorry,
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's a little bit of time to let me in. It's okay. It's all good.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Sorry, I just get excited that I have a question, so I start reading them. Okay, so answering the first question, uh, honestly speaking, the, they can go without HR department at the beginning, not at the level when they have to have growth that starts counting in tens on the level of months. So I've seen startups that really need to hire 20, 30 people in one quarter. That they're not capable for that, not at all. And then, um, so HR in startups actually is more for this on mass employment than in picking specific talent, because these guys, especially the founders, they have their running list in their heads who are the people they want to get on board. And then long before they start making a startups, they start scheduling them and maybe working with them. So these top talents that they need for first year or two of development, uh, especially in technical skills, they can do without HR. They need HR when they need to start hiring on mass. And then another area where they are desperately need help of HRs is when they start getting to the point where business development and sales become very important. Those are the skills where they don't have contacts, they don't know people, and that's where HR comes very, very handy. Okay, so now I let you do your job, and I apologize for reading the first question.
That was the first one, right? That was the first one. Do
Yeah,
you
that
think
was the first
that
one.
was the first one, right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go down to the second one now, which is connected with the first question, but more towards the competencies and the qualities that a startup is looking for in terms of HR. So, what are you looking for when employing an HR for a startup? What are the qualities, competencies he or she needs to have? What would you say?
I honestly do believe that it comes down to ability to install the discipline. Very often startups don't have the discipline, and I think that HR is a good place for this discipline to come from. Maybe because you least expected HR people to come and be the disciplinarians, but I do believe because you know
Can
they.
I just ask you, just in
Sure,
terms of
go
the
ahead.
discipline, what exactly? Can you just be a little bit more specific on the
Sure,
discipline,
sure.
in terms of working ethics,
It,
in terms of day-to-day working, or?
it comes from the banal stuff in do we start the calls on the same on time that we scheduled, or everybody's late for 10 15 minutes, like such a funny things that you don't expect people who are out of school to have problems with, to more important ones about reporting to investors and finishing on time, and I mentioned during the presentation the record keeping and some of the stuff that you're expected to have. It doesn't matter that you're a startup. So I think that I expect HR to be on board of startups long before you really have some C-level people hired, CEOs or whatever. So as I said, HR probably is the first grown person entering the startup. That will be my expectation. Of course, trends are there to be redefined and rules to be broken. But if we're talking about some tendencies, I do expect just right if the startup is going in the right clip, HR will be brought in among the first of these, positions that enable further growth. And in that sense, you know, the being able to install the discipline and to give the structure to, relationships, communications, channels of communications is something that is quite important. And that, like for example, if I was hiring for a startup that I invested, I would look for these skills.
Okay. Okay, that's fair answer. Good. Let's move on to our next question below. So, do you believe that internal mentorship is healthy in startups, and when is the time to bring something in externally, if ever? What would you
Yeah,
say?
well, of course, mentorship is quite important because, uh, as I said, you either going to have a domain expert or engineer being a founder, and these people usually are very skillful in one area, but having almost no skills in some other area. And they are the frontmen, right? They are supposed to go in front of the investors talking about the finance. They should go in front of the customer talking about product. They should, bring and grow the talent within the company. So actually working, if possible, to get the founder to work on mentorship in like a relationship that is mentor like, it's very, very, very healthy. And then I think that the first investment coming in, even a seed, external mentorship is it's proper to have, because if you already took somebody's money and you need to grow and your next phase should be getting even more money in a year and a half or two, you should build these founders that you are responsible for to be smarter, better looking than they already are. Because as if you expect the company to grow, how this company is going to grow without these people also growing? So in that sense, mentorship is definitely yes. External mentorship, I would say, the moment you take somebody's money, part of the money should go investment for everyone who are face of the company to be even better.
Nebojša, listen, thank you so much. I mean, we'll finish on that note there. Lots of insights and a great perspective as well. And the thing is, again, so much has been shared through this session here, because this is all online. This will all be on demand online for about a month or so. So everybody can look back at this session and take notes if they haven't already, and use those certainly to their benefit. Listen, Nebojša, thank you so much for spending your time with us, giving us your time and sharing your perspectives as well.
I enjoyed. It was a chance for me to maybe line up my thoughts on some topic that I didn't think before. And my kudos to all the brave souls that lasted through the week and this long day. So thank you.